Hello, everyone. Settle in here. It's going to be a long haul. All right, so hello, everybody. All right, all you laptop viewers. Now you look up. Hello. Got a waiver in the back. So while this is a crowdfunding session, the first thing I wanted to say is we really want this to be interactive. So we're going to talk for a little bit, but hopefully you're in this room because you've got some questions, some comments about the future of crowdfunding. So again, we're going to talk for just a couple minutes, give you a little bit of an overview, get this thing started, but a highly interactive session. Please reach out to us. We will find a way to see you and continue the dialogue from your questions. So really quickly, why don't we go ahead and just do introductions, and you want to just kick it off?
Sure. My name is Josh Lifton. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CrowdSupply. I started CrowdSupply with my co-founders about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and we really came from the engineering side of things and brought our product design experience, our e-commerce experience, and we were trying to fill that gap that a lot of you in this room probably have. Create a product, and then what do you do? So fundamentally, CrowdSupply is a heavily curated, kind of high-quality products platform. Where crowdfunding is the center of it. We have our own crowdfunding platform, and then there's a variety of services around that that augment that. So we do fulfillment, we do marketing, we do sales afterward, we do campaign strategy, things like that. And we actually, our main business is actually selling things afterward. So the campaign is the beginning, and that relationship continues on for as long as that product exists. To date, we've launched over 80 products. We have the highest success rate. It's about 60% now of our projects succeed. The highest funding, average funding for those projects. And so far, a perfect delivery record. And for me, that's the most important thing, is getting things to people who paid for them. Some of them are late, of course, but they're all on track, either delivered or on track for delivery. And our main sectors that have kind of chosen us are open hardware, which you're all fairly familiar with, I think, premium lifestyle goods that have a heavy craftsmanship component, and then educational technology, kind of STEM products. And I can talk more about those, of course. You can go to crowdsupply.com, check it out, and we have a lot of stuff coming up.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Dimatos. I'm the lead for tech and design projects at Kickstarter. We've been around for about 6 years. I came to Kickstarter about 2.5 years ago. I used to work at MakerBot. I came in from the Maker community and started thinking and looking at how to help the tech community really have a great presence on our site. In the last 6 years, we've had about 8.2 million people back projects. We have a few thousand projects live at any given time on the site, and we've had $1.6 billion pledged towards projects. What all this means for me is a lot of great success for independent thinkers and creators that want to really have great tech projects and professionalize along a path that is meaningful to them. We're a very inclusive platform, and one of the stats that I'm particularly proud of is the fact that we've had over 800 projects raise over $100,000. It's a meaningful number, and for those of you who were in Eric's session yesterday, you'll see that you can have a very sustainable existence with a lifestyle type company based on a tech project, and we see a lot of that happening on Kickstarter. Some interesting things that have been happening in the last year or so. We've seen a great trend of repeat creators that had a successful project, delivered on it, and then are coming back for a second project. And these are experienced, refined creators that have bigger teams, have more confidence, and they take on more ambitious projects. Most notably, Pebble Time was a big project this year, and when they came back, you'll see it spread out throughout their campaign. They were back for the community. They were back for the bigger narrative of reaching out to their original backers and launching their new product with them all over again. And we did an event with them at South by Southwest, and they invited a lot of their original backers. It was packed. It was packed to the gills full of people that were fans of the company and Eric and the story, and we really like to celebrate that. We've also had a bunch of other big creators come back this year, like 3Doodler came back with a project, and it also fits into, like, on the other side of the spectrum with smaller companies that have been really doing interesting things along the lines of like 4, 5, 6 projects over the course of the last few years, really fine-tuning and fitting in a Kickstarter campaign in their larger business model. We see now people really thinking about it in a mature way of understanding and saying, there's a corpus of thousands of projects that have already done this on Kickstarter. You can read the page, you can read the comments, you can read the FAQ, and really understand in a transparent way what worked, what didn't. So we see a lot of groups now really taking advantage of that and the ecosystem that has risen up around us as well. So that leads me actually to something that we think about a lot, which is communities. The maker community is in some ways the prototypical community of people that share a value system, and they look at our platform and they develop like a communal set of best practices. And you kind of see like the knowledge transfer within that community. So for example, at most maker fairs, we observe about 10% of exhibitors have run Kickstarter campaigns. And you also now start to see groups like Hacks, Accelerator, launch groups of projects in a class. So we have one of their projects, Chip, right now has raised over $1 million. And it's like 4 or 5 projects all at the same time. And you kind of see they launched together, they learned from each other. It's a really great moment. A lot of like students are coming out of programs that have launched dozens of projects. And to me, what it really means is people that decide that they look at our platform and they see that they can do it their own way, for their own reasons, in a way that is sustainable for themselves. So we look at that and we think a lot about where it goes next. And one of the things is creative communities that are not traditionally doing hardware. So if you're a graphic designer, you're able to now kind of take advantage of the ecosystem that's out there to do something that is moderately more ambitious than what you were doing before. And I'm sure Josh is seeing a lot of this stuff too. Like you see people that might be coming out of crafts, out of graphic design, and utilizing an ecosystem of developing with prototyping systems like the Arduino, and sometimes sticking with those platforms for the production side as well. Or sometimes like taking it to larger scale using like an ecosystem that includes companies like PCH and Dragon. So that's like kind of like some of the big things that we're seeing this year. We launched a couple of great features. We've integrated with Google Analytics, which gives you like a more fine-tuned understanding of where your traffic is coming from. And we also launched a feature called Spotlight that allows you to kind of maintain like a better showcase of your project with updates after the campaign is done. That's kind of it.
Cool. Hi, I'm Eric Klein, and I am a crowdfunding addict. Okay, no, this is not a therapy session. I'm Eric Klein. I'm a partner at Lemnos Labs, and I have a little bit different perspective on crowdfunding because I run a hardware accelerator, Lemnos Labs, and so a lot of my teams have to figure out at some point in their lives what to do about this term, crowdfunding, or pre-sales. And I think the interesting thing, crowdfunding to me is it's one of my sort of it gets me more excited than any other word in my vocabulary. More so than maybe CAD or other great things. But what I mean to say by that is the word crowdfunding means more than just that word. Like inside of that word, as we unpack this, there are things like inside of that words like patron, pre-sales, marketing, relationship. And how you manage this isn't, I think the funny thing is so many people, and even the companies that come through my program often say, I'm going to do this crowdfunding thing like it's a one-off event. And the funny thing is it's not a singular event. There's a long lead up to whatever you're doing. There's the thing that you're doing. And then you have to remember that that is just the beginning of a relationship that you're creating. Inside of that, other things, you know, folks are like, well, I'm doing this because I'm trying to raise money. And the first thing I want to do is I want to grab them and beat them around a little bit and go, wait a minute, what is it that you want out of your crowdfunding campaign? And then what's the right vehicles, the right tools to accomplish that goal? But I think we're gonna set this conversation up about the future from today forward. Really, where is crowdfunding going? What does it really mean? Because I think, again, it is more than this 30-day campaign to try to generate revenue and pre-sales for a product. It's way more than that. And I want to unpack that. And I want to hear what you guys are thinking about it, what your questions are about it. And I think as we go into the future, I'm going to add a few more words to the mix. Equity, right? Equity funding. And again, extending that relationship. Curation is a big word that's on my mind a lot. If you read my blog, I'm a huge fan of creating positive relationships. You said you had 100% a ship rate, it sounded like. Again, it's an important part of reputation, right? People who come back for the second ones are building on a successful campaign. So as we go through, I think crowdfunding, that word, it has history, right? We've been doing it a while. I think today crowdfunding is very different than it was just a few years ago. And I'm going to make the argument in a few years it's going to be very different again. And so I'd like to focus that conversation around where we're going to, where we're going. And so I'm going to throw a question or two out there, and then again we'll take some questions from the audience as well. So I think one of the great questions, and I'm going to ask both of you to chime in on, is it's an interesting relationship where there is a product owner, there's the crowdfunding firm, right, the agent in the middle. And then there's the end user who's buying, and I got to be careful with my words, right? And we're going to get into that in a minute, right? Who enters into a relationship around the crowdfunding? Who owns that customer relationship? And how do you guys see that both today, and how do you see that evolving? Because I know it's evolving, right?
Yeah, so for us, CrowdSupply is a very business-oriented place, and so we give that all that customer data to our creators. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's heavily curated, and so they're also our customer. And we want to do everything we can to make sure that they get what they're expecting. So really, the first relationship is between us and the creator, mm-hmm. making sure we're on the same page and that we're confident they can deliver what they're talking about. And that they're going to be upfront with their customers. And then we support them going forward as they make those relationships with customers. Yeah. Okay,
gotcha.
For us, so the relationship is definitely squarely between the creator and their backer. Mm-hmm. We build in a lot of things to elevate like a sense of transparency and honesty. It's built into our terms between the creators of projects and the backers. Mm-hmm. We definitely curate on an editorial level. It's an inclusive platform. Anybody can run a project, but we have a great team of editors who are constantly looking at all the different categories, 15 of them, to make sure that there's like a balance that like really represents like the more artistic side of Kickstarter alongside with like the more like hard-nosed kind of technology side of things as well. It's you always want, for us, it's always about like representing that mix in like a really ambitious, in an ambitious way. But the relationship is squarely between the creator, who's making the project and the product, and the backer. We have a fairly large outreach team that works closely with creators and gives them feedback on their project.
Let's get more nuanced on this. So you start a campaign, and people start to back it. And the interesting thing is there's communication going on, oftentimes through the crowdfunding site between the creator and the consumer. And as that's going on nowadays, I think for folks out in the audience, maybe you can echo and comment on this. Folks are going, all right, well, I got one backer here, but I want them now to go viral. And so in this world, we talk about retargeting ads, and we talk about building on the velocity, that each backer is the beginning of more velocity. And so they're trying, at some level, the product creators like, look, I need more information. I want to reach out to these people even before the campaign is done and start to use them to amplify. And I think some tools are being built into platforms to help with that, but it's an interesting relationship because maybe if it had a funding goal, it might not have even hit it yet the product creators are already trying to create even more velocity. So there's already a little, I'm not going to, well, I am going to call it tension, or a little bit of, hey, I want to start to really go one-on-one with the backers even before the campaign's done, let alone after it's done, where I think a lot of times they're like, the product creators are like, give me all the data, I need to run with it. On the other hand, maybe there's the opportunity as crowdfunding goes forward to be a more symbiotic relationship after the campaign ends. So I'd like to talk about that interaction maybe between the product owner and the funding, the backbone, what you guys do.
I think you're pinpointing one of the most interesting dynamics on our site. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a need when you launch a project to do outreach, to get the word out, to find the right audience for your project. It's not always, like, you'll find a lot of people on our site that want to see new interesting things, but your people are out there and you need to find them. So, Google Analytics is our first kind of foray into this territory. We don't do retargeting pixels, but you can accomplish a lot with something like Google Analytics. Yeah. But the balance there and the tension for me is, do you want a lot of people that includes some people that are a little bit like, they might want it, they might like it? Or would you prefer to have a much more targeted, enthusiastic, but smaller group of people? How aggressive do you want to be with that outreach? It's a very interesting tension, and it should to some extent be happening during the campaign. And the way that you communicate with your backers should always be in a very respectful and familial way. We always say, look, your backers are fundamentally, they're going to be very close with you. You're going to know a lot of them by first name. You might hire some of them to do community work for you. Right. So treat them as such. It's an evolution from thinking of them just as customers. Right. They're definitely not customers. They're much more than that. They are pledging towards your project and backing it financially, and it doesn't exist yet, to speak to the tension of using the word buy. Right. Right? This is not a thing that exists yet. You buy something that exists. So when somebody gives you money towards that, they are trusting you. So we always want to encourage a sense of, again, transparency and also just being forthright with those backers about what you expect from them to do. So there's nothing built into our system that encourages a referral scheme, because that's going to be, it's going to incentivize in a very different way. Okay. Later, after the campaign, using that core group post Kickstarter is really up to you about if you want to develop programs like that. Do you see yourself extending that relationship? Again, the campaign ends, and in the old, I'm going to say in the old model, right? The names were transferred over, and responsibility, in a large part, moved from Kickstarter to a direct relationship between the creator and the backer. It's still done like that. Do you see yourselves extending farther in and trying to add value, sort of post that, and maybe I'll use an example to make my point. So Pebble runs a campaign. They come back 12 months later. Interesting thing, in between here and there, now Pebble may be an interesting example because they have such a well-developed channel and brand, but in between that window, between the campaigns, do you see that there's value in what you guys build and being involved with product creators between those two start and end points? We do stay involved. We maintain conversations there. Mm-hmm. So the same way, it's interesting. So project creators maintain communications with their backers. We maintain communication with our creators. We want to celebrate their successes, spotlight the new feature that we have where you can kind of showcase what's going on after your project. That's our first foray into it. It's, we think hard about this stuff. It's we're doing it in a very specific and targeted way. Well, I mean, and I'm going to jump over in just a second, but I think it's interesting because in all the campaigns I back, which is way too many, the email that I get from that point all the way to shipment is actually through it. It's got the Kickstarter. It's through Kickstarter still, right? I mean, or at least most of the ones I get that way. So I see how I still see your brand all the way through that cycle up to delivery. It's really up to the creator. They have the backer emails, so they can. You must be doing something right. They want to use your vehicle, maybe. I don't know. It's what I'm noticing. I will let our devs know. Okay. Give me your perspective on this. So
I agree with that protecting the customer and handing over that relationship and helping that relationship mature. I think the fundamental difference between Kickstarter and crowd supply is summed up in this buy term, right? Mm-hmm. Like for us, and to give you the backstory, the genesis of Crowd Supply, back in 2012, we were watching things like the first Pebble watch and the Elevation dock and a couple other campaigns on Kickstarter, and this was coming from places of people that I knew and places I'd been, and I was thinking, wow, we could be doing that. And then there was that seminal blog post that Kickstarter had, Kickstarter's not a store. And my co-founders and I all looked at each other and like, you do e-commerce and you have a fulfillment center and like we make products. So 6 months later to the day, our first blog post was Crowd Supply is a store.
22 minutes in, for the record. Now we're here. Okay.
And so, and that sums up the foundational difference, right? I mean, we only sell things, first of all, right? So it's only physical things that are manufactured and shipped to somebody. We don't do kind of the more traditional arts patronage type thing. But yeah, to get to your question, yeah, absolutely there's value there. I mean, fundamentally, I think that the funding aspect of crowdfunding will be quickly commoditized, and it's already happening, right? Like I can go set up a Stripe account right now, right, and do it all myself if I really wanted to, and that's getting easier and easier. You don't even know how to program at this point, hardly. So the value add is going to be in the relationships that you foster and maintain, and the brand that you're building, like you said, the reputation. Are people getting what they need?
Help me, and I'm so excited to have you two on the stage because I want to really talk about this. The challenge I have, and I've written about it, really is for me, and there's no right answer. I think we're going to see a model where different things are created for different purposes, but today I'm going to call it the dichotomy of the patron versus pre-sales, or thinking about the patron model and a channel model. And I think I'm going to say that you're, at some level, when you have the buy button, it's a channel. And folks like Best Buy, they create a channel and they maintain relationships with customers afterwards. And we've seen some examples on the bigger form with like Kickstarter. I mean, Pebble coming back, wow, that looked a heck of a lot like a pre-sales campaign. And it had the numbers of a pre-sales campaign from an amazing company. I mean, gosh, amazing sales, amazing what happened there. But then again, at the same time, right next to it, if I hit the back button, I might land on a small indie art project, and it's much more of a patron relationship. How do you guys see those two words working together, and with the frame of reference, not only us who are somewhat educated about it, but that end user out in the middle of America who's like going to a page and going, "What am I doing when I hit the button?"
Yeah, I think about this a lot. And I think that, wouldn't it be great if it turns out that we are moving, I think we are moving towards a world in which, like, it was patron and what was the other one?
Well, like pre-sales or channel or...
Patron, pre-sale, customer, producer, like, it's different sides of a coin. Usually it's somebody who has something and wants to provide it to you in a very clean transaction. What if we're hybridizing and it's more about a fan base? Mm-hmm. What if, like, take Pebble Time, for example. Actually, that's a great example. You have an enormous set of backers, like thousands of people who, they don't just want a thing. They want a thing and they want to understand what it is, how it happened, and they want to be part of like creating that story with Pebble. So I think my answer is I think we're moving towards a place where it becomes more of a hybrid future.
The challenge I have, and I'm going to, you have a buy button, and you have today 100% conversion. You hit that buy button, the product's going to come out. I think when I hit that button on the Pebble Time, I was pretty darn confident I was going to get a Pebble Time out of that deal. Again, I hit the back button and I land on a page, and all of a sudden, again, if I hit 5 times on a button and I get it 5 times in a row, it's like the slots. On the 6th time, I expect I'm going to win, but when it goes bust, I'm like, whoa, what happened? So it's the expectations, because it's one button, and so I look at that and I go, depending on where you're landing, the expectations are changing. I think in your case, it's a consistent one, and I think in the Kickstarter narrative, you have such a wider scope.
Yes.
And so that's the interesting thing, because I think about it from the end user's perspective. I'm always trying to think of, the relationship and building a great relationship. And part of it is when I talk to my companies, I'm like, you're building a reputation through whatever campaign vehicle you use. And so that end-to-end experience has got to be great. And so part of it is brand affiliation. If I see that this brand is affiliated with 100% fulfill rate, that's awesome. And Kickstarter has a great reputation as well, but protecting that when the button has these interesting meanings, I'm intrigued, especially going forward, how we protect all of our reputations through this process.
It's definitely an evolving conversation. We've spun up like a really like strong integrity team that's always looking at the site, looking for how they can help creators, how they can help both of these communities. There's definitely a balance there. We strive to be very inclusive across 15 different categories, and we want people to treat the platform in the best way for their community. So like the theater community is very strong. Like people just kind of coalesce around it, and they are more in the patron model for sure. But again, even somebody who's running like a theater or a dance project has things that they will want to deliver as rewards in addition to receiving the money for patronage towards the project. So a lot of stuff, like you get a lot of best practices that carry over. So fulfillment, for example, as like a topic that comes up, so to like use a company that like can do fulfillment for your t-shirts, for example. If you're running a t-shirt project in the fashion category, that's fundamental to the actual product of what you're doing. If you're doing a music project or a theater project, it's tangential, but you still get to benefit from the best practices that were developed in that other category.
Got it.
Yeah.
Talk to me, because your button, because I've zeroed in on the button, on that click. Your click has a meaning.
Yep.
And how did you come up with that meaning, and where do you see that meaning going forward? Like, what does that click mean?
I wish I took video of the hours of conversation we had on what that button would say. Wow. But there's actually 3 different texts, right? One is back this project, where it's crowdfunding, very much like you'd find on Kickstarter. Then there's pre-order now, right, where the funding has been done, you're just getting in line, right? You're still supporting the project, and yours is going to come next. And there's add to cart, right, where we have it in our warehouse, or drop ship, or consignment, or whatever it is. And so each of those denotes a slightly different expectation. On the expectation side of things, there's, if you just took a single snapshot of our site, it would say back this project, and it might say deliver or ships in December, right? But if you come back and 500 backers later, it will say ships in January or February, right? And the rationale there, instead of just being static text, it's actually baked into our platform that we understand your manufacturing process enough that we can put fairly reliable dates out there. And so that's the sort of detail that is much more about commerce and buying a thing. At the same time, I agree with John that melding together of patronage and purchasing is, I think, the ideal case, right? I don't want to sell things that are just going to end up in the landfill. And I want people to be so excited about the product that they're about to buy that they would actually give a little bit extra anyway, right? And so, and we see that a lot. People will buy their laptop and throw in, a 6-pack of beer. So,
I'm going to pause. Questions from the audience? Yes. I think we have. Hold on. We have a mic coming right to you. Thank you. If you yell, I'll repeat the question.
From your experience, what trends do you see in successful campaigns? What trends do you see in unsuccessful?
Okay, so the question was, what trends, I like how it's a forward-leading question into the future, what trends do you see in successful projects, and what trends do you see in ones that weren't as successful?
I think we're going to agree on this one.
Cats.
Preparation. And cats, yes. Preparation.
Lols.
Honestly, preparation is going to always be the key for this. Teams that decide they want to run a Kickstarter campaign like a month before they decide to do it and haven't really like developed a preview that they've shared with their friends, with like trusted colleagues and advisors to get feedback on their messaging, or have started reaching out to media or developing a social media strategy, if you don't do the right preparation, that's going to affect your campaign. I like to tell teams, like, as early as possible, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, like, start preparing for this. It's a big milestone, right? It's supposed to take you from zero to something significant that propels you into the future. That's the before, and the after is also very important. What are you doing the day that the campaign is done? What's your plan? With Crowd Supply, it's actually built in, which is great. For us, you need to know what you're doing because we want you to succeed, so you have to have some sort of plan.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Because we heavily curate what is launched on the platform, the flip side of curation is it's not just rejecting, right? It's actually giving advice and saying, hey, this is a really neat idea, but we don't think it's feasible for X, Y, Z. And X, Y, Z could be marketing, physics, preparation, anything. And we've seen perpetual motion machines, which is not possible, but then we've seen really good ideas that they just haven't prepared enough, right? They just haven't done anything in preparation yet. So part of my job is talking to people and saying, hey, you could launch this tomorrow, and I think you could get this goal, right? If you put in 3 months or however long and do these things, then you can hit this goal, right? So it's a pretty basic equation, right? There's how many people you can get this in front of, and assuming it's a good idea, we know within very small margins what the conversion rate is, and then it's just how much are they going to spend, how much does it cost, and this is your goal here. That's how much you're going to get out of it.
It's not a magical solution, basically. You're still going to need a business plan. You're still going to need like a strong sense of identity and messaging. And knowing what you want to get out of the campaign. A great group of backers. I see a lot of teams that start off as having never done any marketing for themselves before, and just having to go through this process, really understand who they are, they understand how to work with their team, they understand the messaging around their campaign, how to talk about it. That's very important. That, in terms of things that happen around the campaign that are not necessarily backers and dollars raised, neither the crowd or the funding, it's understanding who you are in that process. It can be a very vulnerable thing.
Yeah. I want to build on something you said real quick. You said I want relationships where the product doesn't end up in the landfill, and I want to build on that. We're going Jetsons. We're going into the future here. So we talk about a relationship between the consumer and the product creator. And I think we pay it a little bit of lip service right now in terms of them being involved in the product cycle, which is perk level 32, I get to pick white or black. I'm like, okay, that's really simple. Do you see a future where maybe even before the product is ready, oh my gosh, I just said way before it's ready, that consumers can get involved in meaningful ways with a product creator about what it is. I've heard 5 sessions here about ideation early and understanding the customer thing. Is that a function that might get rolled into this so that it's not selecting your color during the purchase, but that there is a meaningful relationship between potential patron, and I think that's where patron really starts to kick in. I get excited. Now I can be a patron again. But we would have to change the platform to make that relationship so at the end it doesn't end up in the landfill. It's a passionate item that I feel connected to.
Yeah, I don't see a future in that because it's already happened, right?
Tell me about that
then. The prime example that's fresher in my mind is the Librem 15 laptop, which is a laptop built actually just south of here. And when the campaign launched in late November, it had one set of specifications, which were pretty good, but most people didn't want that. And they really made themselves known, right? They're like, I don't want this. I want 32 gigs of RAM. I want an empty drive bay. I want hardware switches to turn off wireless and whatnot.
But for the folks in the audience who might not know this, did the backers get vocal and the campaign fail and it come back as a new thing, or did it reboot in flight?
This was rebooted in flight. So come maybe a month into it, Todd, the creator, he's like, well, I'm trying my hardest to fix these things. And don't get me wrong, he worked his butt off, right? I mean, he was working, he answered every email just as he should have. He went back to his manufacturers and suppliers and tried to get the best he could. In the end, the entire motherboard of the laptop, which is really the core, was completely redesigned. And so now there's something that many people are quite happy with. He raised close to $500,000 doing it, and he's starting to ship, I think, next month.
It's a great project.
Yeah, and that was like, I wish I could see that in every project where real feedback happened. And Pebble is a great example. They were a watershed, but I was a little bit disappointed that they brought in their old community, and I think it's great they gave them access, but they had that, like we were talking earlier, it was either fully designed or it wasn't going to ship when they said, right? And so I felt like if it had incorporated that sort of feedback, who knows what we would have, right? I mean, that would be, I think, amazing if that level of project could do that.
Some of the stuff that we're seeing, and again, I agree, this is already happening. So the color thing, I see it as like similar to the first conversations in 3D printing around, you can customize it, you can make anything, so what am I going to make? It feels very similar to kind of like that early stage conversation. But the things that I'm seeing, there's interesting kind of anecdotal stuff. There was a 3D printer project out of the UK that the spools that they were shipping had NFC in them in order for the machine to recognize the material and the color. And the backers demanded that they also ship empty spools so they can put their own experimental material on. And they changed some things. They just made the NFC chip reprogrammable so that the community could do it. So in this case, what the community did was basically say, we are more in tune with openness. Could you make your platform a little more open? And there's a little bit of a conversation and effectively a negotiation that happens there between the creator and the backer. We think it's a fascinating thing. We think it's healthy. But we're also seeing, like, some of the stuff that I like is also considering, like, involvement, not necessarily in, like, a very active, like, do this for me or change this for me because I want it like this, which is great. We also see it in the form of storytelling and the form of narrative, of people understanding that they are not industrial designers. They will never be industrial designers. And yet, industrial designers and engineers affect everything in their lives. So just hearing about, we went to the factory, here's a picture from the factory. Here's why we made the design decision the way that we did it. Introducing design thinking to a more mainstream audience is a way of doing this.
Gotcha.
It's a really great way of people bringing in, and it feels a lot like athletics, like sports. People who are fans of sports, they cannot dunk the ball, but they really love it when somebody else does it.
Gotcha. Questions? We're going to take any more questions? I am scanning around. Okay.
There's one back there.
I had a question.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
we'll get the other question in just a second.
Yep.
But no doubt, both companies have a very strong, place a very high priority on their brand and maintaining that brand. But it seemed to be very early in the conversation that there was a difference in how much of your brand you were willing to imbue into the delivery of a product. So you seem like you're willing to say, I will put in Crowd Supply my brand in some jeopardy here because I'm going to try to make sure that things get delivered on time, and I'm backing them to that extent. And in Kickstarter, it sounds like it's a lesser standard. Did I hear that right?
I don't think of it as a lesser standard. I think is my on? It's not necessarily a lesser standard. It's actually more about, we've made a very strong commitment to maintaining like a strong relationship of transparency and honesty between backers and creators. And sure, there's definitely been some stuff in the past, and you still see like a lot of creators that like struggle to deliver. But fundamentally, it's happening on a broad scale of like people are coming forth and delivering on their projects and maintaining the continuity of conversations with their backers. We want to foster an environment of inclusivity, an environment where anybody can feel ambitious enough to launch a project, but we also want to maintain a strong sense of integrity between the backers and project creators as well.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't disagree with that, right? I mean, I think that we provide a lot of help and services and things specifically around physical products, right? And so in doing so, we do, I think, put our brand on the line in that way, which is, we want those things to succeed. But they're just different beasts.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
so I believe there was one. We're gonna have time definitely for one more question, and I'm gonna. Oh, we have two.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see if we can get them both in. I know and we have one way in the back. We'll pick that one up. We will make sure we'll get you in.
I'm curious if you could just speak to the gender mix of your audience, of your backers. I understand that Kickstarter is far more male-dominated. Indiegogo is close to 50-50. I don't know about crowd supply. I was interested, one, in where are you on it, and is it something that you try to engineer in any way?
And if we could, in the back, we'll pick that question. If we have the mic there, we'll use our time efficiently. Okay. Sorry.
So we don't explicitly try to engineer our demographics. We kind of let it happen naturally. And I don't have exact numbers off the top of my head, but in terms of creators, I think so far it's been skewed a little bit toward male. We've had, but then again, one of our most successful campaigns was a sports bra, right? And that was done by a very together team of women executives who started this company and wanted to bring their manufacturing to the States from China. In terms of backers, I don't have the exact demographics, but I can tell you that we've sold all over the world and to every type of person, people who didn't even know they were backing a crowdfunding campaign, to the family of the people running it, right? So, but if I had to guess, I would probably guess that it's, again, slightly skewed toward men.
For us, we don't explicitly gather demographic data. Within the category of tech and design, I would say that I'm also going to assume that it skews a little bit more towards male. Overall, though, across the board on our site, with 8 million people having backed projects, and with categories that are much more gender neutral or much more balanced out, like film and theater and music, it's going to tend more towards 50-50.
And our last question is in the back.
Thank you. Excuse my voice, I have a cold. But I had a question on if you have any examples of crowdfunding a success for companies or products aimed at a more traditional business-to-business markets.
Good question.
We
Good
get that
future question,
business to
too.
business. Is that right? Yeah. We get that inquiry a lot. Somebody who has a product that wants to sell, that the product is designed to sell into a business, and we're just very upfront about that. Crowdfunding is really more for direct-to-consumer. It's very difficult to concentrate the sort of attention you need from businesses, typically. So then again, there's a lot of prosumer, or individual professionals that would use certain products, say in photography or in some information security, right? So it's kind of hard to say definitively that it's not a good idea, but there are many cases where we give ample warning.
I don't know, it sounds like a darn good idea to me.
I actually fundamentally agree with Josh as well, that like right now, what we're seeing is much more a consumer-oriented array of projects in tech and design. However, it doesn't work until somebody does it, until somebody cracks the code, and then it works, and then everybody says, well, of course it's for that. Because we saw this with design. The roots of our company are in the arts. So when designers and engineers started showing up and saying, I can use this for tooling costs and reduce my risk on that, it made complete sense once there were a few successful projects. So I expect that one day we'll start to see the same thing happen with the business-to-business. And I love your observation on camera stuff, on the prosumer stuff. So it's not maybe business-to-business on an infrastructure level, on like what we think of today as like business-to-business, but it's definitely happening on the level of an independent professional who needs a bit of gear to give him an edge in the market.
Yep. Good. Exciting times for crowdfunding. I think we'll be around afterwards, but gentlemen, thank you for your perspectives on this, and
Thank you.
We will hand the mics over.
Okay. Thanks for the question.